The guillotine to the French was more than just an execution method. It was considered the representation of the French Revolution. It was seen as a device that freed the French from the oppression of the monarchy, as King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, the King and Queen, were killed on it. But the guillotine was used in a number of different lands, and it was not exclusively used in just France. It took inspiration from earlier execution devices, such as the Halifax gibbet, which was a falling axe blade on a wooden structure used inside of medieval England. But the German guillotine, or the Fallbeil, was even used during the Nazis' Third Reich. Join us today as we look at the German guillotine, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. The guillotine was adopted by many German states, and at the time hand axes were even being used to execute criminals in manners such as beheadings. The French guillotine quickly spread to surrounding countries during the time of the Revolution, and despite the terror claiming thousands of lives in France, shocking many, the Germans saw the idea of the revolution as forward-thinking. Some areas of Germany also reformed their ideas, and they adopted the guillotine as an execution method around the 1800s. In Germany, the guillotine was named the Fallbeil, which translated as a drop axe, and over the years it evolved in a different way to the French guillotine. Early Fallbeils were identical to the 1700s guillotine, but within 100 years they had been made mostly from metal. One of them, used in Hamburg, was used from 1856 to 1933, and the blade shape and release mechanism were very different to how it was initially designed. On the permanent scaffold was also a trap hatch, which allowed the body after death to be dropped down into a coffin in the room below, which was like a shed. This also was based inside of a prison, which allowed executions to be done in private, away from the view of the people, and this specific machine was used for 17 executions. But by the time the Nazis came into power, the Fallbeils around Germany were being used to claim the lives of anyone who opposed the Nazi regime. One lady, Greta Bayer, was executed by the Fallbeil in 1908. She was a daughter of the mayor of Freiburg and was a popular young girl who poisoned and shot her fiancé as she did not love him. But she felt trapped by her family's wish for her to marry him, and she forged a note to make it look like her fiancé had taken his own life, but she was caught and confessed. She was beheaded by the Fallbeil on the 23rd of July 1908, and was just 22 when she was executed by executioner Moritz Brand. This Fallbeil had tall posts, but no place for the body to be placed inside of, and it was used in Weimar commonly. There were a number of executioners, though, who were very comfortable and adept at using the Fallbeil. Many of them were photographed next to their execution device, and seemingly looked proud in their executioner's clothes. They were shown dressed in suits and top hats, and the executioners also used assistants. The scaffold would have a pile of sand and sawdust under the head bucket, which was there to catch the head. This was done to soak up the blood of the victim, but executioners often stayed on for years. One family closely associated with the Fallbeil was the Reichharts, and Johann Reichhart assumed the job, taking over from his uncle, and he became an infamous Nazi executioner. As mentioned, some Fallbeils were more compact, and some were all made of metal. They often had a metal gliding frame, in which a slanted blade would be guided through before it hit the victim. The drop axe was often heavy, and would weigh around 70 kilograms in weight. When executions occurred with this machine, the condemned would step onto the footrest, before they were then strapped with 2 leather belts to a wooden board. This board was then slid into place and tilted, before the blade was then released, and the execution would be performed in seconds. There was often a gutter that was connected to the Fallbeil scaffold, in which blood would run into the drain, or would capture the spillages and mess. Above the device often was a small bell, which was attached to a prison wall, and this was referred to as the sinner's bell, and would ring constantly during an execution. Black curtains were also found inside of execution chambers, as privacy would be granted to the victim, and they even used this during the Nazi regime. But Johann Reichhart and his Fallbeil became infamous for their executions during Hitler's time in power. He executed around 3,000 people using the guillotine in different prisons around Germany, and the majority of the victims were those who resisted the Nazi regime. His most famous execution was of Sophie Scholl, a prominent member of the White Rose movement who resisted Hitler and tried to encourage other people to rise up. He later said Sophie was the bravest person he ever had to execute. This specific Fallbeil was destroyed at the end of the war, but it's believed it may have actually just been hidden, and it's recently resurfaced in a Bavarian museum. Older wooden German guillotines eventually were retired by the more compact metal machines, and they were refurbished even down to the head bucket, which was given an easier-to-wash metal upgrade. Many of these were captured by the Allies during the Second World War, and one was actually put back into service by the British, which was used to execute criminals sentenced to death under German law, even after the Second World War. Those who were sentenced to death by Allied war crimes tribunals were killed by hanging, but German courts sentenced those to death by beheading. Some were even fitted with steel tables and tilting planks, but it was inside of prisons where Fallbeils were used. In particular, inside the execution chamber at Plötzensee prison, many members of resistance groups to the Nazis were executed using it. They were also used in Czechoslovakia and in occupied lands. For example, in Pankrář prison, the Tegel Fallbeil was used to execute over 100 people during the German occupation. Most of these victims were Czech citizens who resisted the Nazi occupation. Just 12 days before Germany surrendered in the area, the machine was used to execute 5 people. But for 4 years after the end of the Second World War, the death penalty was used in West Germany. There was reluctance to use the instruments of execution on war criminals, as many of the former victims of the Fallbeil, such as Sophie and Hans Scholl, were considered victims and martyrs of the device. Some Fallbeils were still being made in the 1950s, but today can be seen inside of prisons and museums. The Fallbeil was considered a very quick execution device, and within seconds someone could be killed on it. It often took less than 10 seconds to take someone's head clean off, using the German device, and it was very efficient. The Germans refined the device that was used by the French and used it to take the lives of thousands during the Third Reich. It was an execution method synonymous with the executions of men and women who defied Adolf Hitler. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.